The Marin Alpine Trail E1 and E2 are widely acclaimed to be one of the funnest, best value e-bikes on the market. Well, now it's available at an even more affordable price point with the brand new Alpine Trail E. So let's find out if they made any compromises, or is this one of the best value new e-bikes on the market. So let's start a little bit about the travel and geometry of the bikes. So the Alpine Trail E has 150 millimeters of rear travel and 160 millimeters up front, and that's matched to a super slack 63-degree head angle. So that's pretty much as slack as downhill bikes. So this is going to be a super capable bike, but match that with 150 millimeters of rear travel and super short chainstays, I think it's going to make for a really fun, poppy, playful ride that's going to be super stable at speed. So adding to the stability of the bike is a super roomy reach as well. So I'm 185 centimeters, so 6'1", and the 485 millimeter reach on this size large fit me perfectly. And to round things off, you've got a super steep 78-degree seat angle, which you're going to need because you're going to be tackling some really steep climbs on this bike. So before I get into how the bike rides and who this bike might be good for, let's talk a little bit about the spec, because I think in combination with this great frame and geometry, the spec is what really sets this bike apart. So starting off with the frame, it's Marin Series 4 alloy frame, so that's their top of the line frame, so it's going to be nice, durable and robust, which you're going to really need on an e-bike because you're going to be sending this thing down some gnarly descents, and they are on the heavier side, so you do need a really durable frame too. So another must that you must have on an e-bike is great quality brakes. So it's good to see Marin didn't skimp here, and they've been really smart with their spec. Put the Shimano MT420s on there, and I've tried these brakes on other bikes in the past, and they've been a little bit lackluster for me, and that's come down to companies speccing resin-only rotors and resin pads. But where Marin has been really smart here, they've specced 203 rotors front and rear, and these are some decent rotors. And they've also specced it with metallic pads. So in this setup, the braking performance is really impressive. And talking a little bit more about smart spec as well and getting bang for your buck, they've specced it with Shimano Dior 10-speed, which actually I think is one of the best e-bike drivetrains because one, it's affordable, the cassettes all have steel cogs, so they're gonna wear really well. And then the chain, 10-speed chain, they're nice and strong, which you really need on an e-bike. You're gonna be chewing through chains and cassettes, so it's great to have an affordable option there. And the clutch on the Shimano Dior system as well is really good, so chain retention is amazing as well, and that really comes down to that chain guide up front too. And to round off the smart spec when it comes to the drivetrain as well, there's a nice chain guard there too. So again, great job to Marin. And then moving on to the suspension, because this is a little bit different to what you might have seen. So it has the X-Fusion Trace 36 up front, so 36 millimeter stanchions, so that's the width of the stanchions there. It means it's nice and stiff, which again, you really need on an e-bike. So it's super plush up the top, and there's a decent amount of support there. So I think you're gonna be really impressed with this fork. And the shock is an inline shock from X-Fusion as well. So you have rebound adjustment as well as a lockout too. And I was pretty impressed on this shock too on our descents that we have here. I only have around about 100 meters of elevation to play with, so I can't attest to too much about how it performs under extreme heat. But if you are doing some really long Alpine epic days, you might want to upgrade to a piggyback shock in the future. But for the trails that I've been riding on, the shocks perform pretty well. And moving on to the dropper hose now, it's a Trans X unit, and it comes in decent lengths here. So on this size larger that I've got, it's got 170 millimeter drops. And again, another smart thing that Marin have done, there's actually an e-bike specific saddle. So there's a little lip at the back here, and that's gonna really help keep your butt on the saddle when you're on super steep climbs. And then you've also got some tubeless ready rims as well. So that's all the main spec out of the way. So let's talk a little bit about the e-bike stuff. So you're getting a Shimano EP6 motor. So what's great about this motor is you're getting the same torque as the more expensive EP8 at a slight weight panel. The EP8 weighs around about 300 grams, 400 grams less. So to be honest, this is a great value proposition. So 85 newton meters of torque, and you've got 4 main assistance levels. So you've got the off, eco, trail and boost, and there's also a walk mode as well, and you can also customize this with the Shimano eTube app as well. Onto the battery now, and it's a 504 watt hour battery, which personally for me, I really like. I'm not riding more than 30 to 40 kilometers, so I actually appreciate the little bit of weight savings there. But if you do want a little bit more range, the higher end models have a 630 watt hour battery. And then moving on to the switch and display, it's a 600 series from Shimano Steps. So I really like the switch. It gives you a quick little readout of what assistance mode you're in, and it's easy to toggle between those. And that also has the controls for changing your display as well. But at this price point, I like the integration that they've got here with the Shimano stuff as well as the Shimano drivetrain. There's only really the one clamp there on either side, and then you got the dropper post, and then you just have the switch in the display. So that's all the techie stuff out of the way, so let's talk about how the bike rides. So I've spent a fair amount of time on the acoustic Alpine trail, and what I really liked about that bike, it was kind of in between a trail and enduro bike. So you've got 150 millimeters of rear travel with super short chainstays, so it was always decently poppy and playful, but it had a super roomy reach and super slack head angle, so it was a decent amount of stability there as well. So it's always made it a pretty versatile all-mountain enduro kind of bike. So I was really hoping the soul of that bike really carried over to the e-mountain bike version, because I've ridden a few e-bike versions of acoustic bikes in the past, and they've always had super long chainstays, and they just didn't feel the same. But I'm pretty stoked to report that it actually feels pretty similar apart from the little bit of extra weight, and that also gives a little bit of extra suspension performance as well. So you know, with that extra mass and that lower center of gravity, there's definitely a fair bit more stability, and just over the chunky stuff, the suspension is just a little bit more active. But because you have 150 millimeters of rear travel and those super short 435 millimeter chainstays, the bike's actually surprisingly playful, and it can get around some pretty tight corners as well. And I know for some e-bike aficionados, they actually like the longer chainstays because they like going up some ridiculous climbs, but everyone I know that rides an e-bike in Australia is riding the exact same trails as everyone else, so I'd 100% prefer a more playful ride on the way down, and the super grippy tires as well as that steep seat angle is going to give you more than enough traction and put you in a good position on the climbs too. And the last thing to note, which I did forget to mention, the bike is a mullet, so you've got 29-inch wheel in the front and then you got a 27.5 in the rear. So I think that mullet setup, it plays to the strengths of the bike because you get that really playful rear end, and then you've got that business up front because you have that slack head angle, that extra stability that the 29-inch wheel adds. I think it really plays to this bike's strengths. So if you are looking for more of an enduro style e-bike, but you still like to have a bit of fun, I think this is going to be a great option for you, and it's great to see it's at an even more affordable price point now. So that's my thoughts on the brand new Alpine Trail E. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment below or reach out to one of our gearheads. And as always, thanks for watching. See ya.